My name is Wayne Turner. My son Matthew Turner has been falsely arrested and convicted and sentenced to 90 years to life for a murder and attempted murder. Matthew has suffered this at the hands of Deputy District Attorney Andrea Pott, LAPD Northeast Division Detectives Harold Dicorce and Lisa Governo, and Jose Carrillo. As Matthew's father, I have studied all the evidence. I have seen all the witness DVD interviews. I've studied the murder book. I've sat through 2 trials, and I've also sat through the motion of the retrial hearing. To summarize what has happened to my son Matthew, on October the 2nd, 2008, 2 boys were shot in a drive-by shooting. There was a female that was walking with the boys and states that as the shooter gets out of the car, he's 4 to 6 feet away from her. And as he gets out and begins to open fire on the boys, she says freezes there. Something I want to tell you about Matthew is that he has a mole here on his lip, almost the size of a dime. From the crime scene to the police station, the main witness, the girl that was walking with the boys, names a local gang member as being the shooter. She gives a description of the shooter as being about 5'4", stocky, shaved head, and a Latino male. The deceased victim gets shot once in the stomach with a small caliber gun, and he dies at the scene. The surviving victim gets hit 5 times in the upper torso and the head. He loses an eye, and to me that shows that he was the one that was targeted by the shooter. It is during the trial that we learned that the surviving victim and the girl, the witness, were live-in lovers at the time. In court, the surviving victim testified that the day after the shooting, he didn't want nothing to do with that girl anymore. And she never came, not once, to visit him while he was in the hospital. My question is why? I know that in a gang shooting, in broad daylight, gang members don't leave witnesses, especially if they're standing 4 to 6 feet away. The female is brought in 2 weeks after the crime, after the initial interview, and is questioned again about the incident. Her description of the shooters changes slightly, and at the close of this interview, Northeast Detective Harold Dicorce asks her if there was something that stood out about this guy. He says, something distinct. The witness didn't know what the word distinct means. And so the detective goes on to say, you know, something like a scar, a tattoo, or a mole. Her response was no. 2 more weeks go by, and she's in front of a police sketch artist. The police sketch artist testifies in court that she had her in a session for 2 hours, and an hour and a half after the session, into the session, she gives her the opportunity to recollect in her mind if there was anything that she could add to the composite. She asks her, is there anything else that stands out or that you could tell us about this guy? And she says, no, we have a composite drawing with no mole. Something that is a part of the discovery but wasn't brought up in trial was that 6 months after the initial crime, a young man gets arrested for a robbery. He is a young gang member, and he says he has information for a murder because he doesn't want to go to jail for the robbery. He says the next day is his girlfriend's birthday. But anyways, he starts to rant and rave about different things, and the detective says, well, what murder are you talking about? He mentions the girl, the witness, as his cousin, and the deceased victim as his cousin-in-law. So he says that he has an encounter with Matthew. Now let me say this, that he knows Matthew from middle school. Matthew, him, and the girl all went to middle school together, so they know Matthew. He's able to describe how Matthew looks. He goes to say that he sees Matthew coming out of a tattoo shop, and he confronts Matthew, and he says, "Hey, Matthew, what's happening?" And Matthew tells him, "Oh, I just got a tattoo. I just came out the tattoo shop and I got a tattoo." Let it be known that Matthew has no tattoos. The detectives stripped him, and found no tattoos on Matthew. So apparently, this guy is lying. Anyways, this young man is never brought into court. He's never testifies in court. But this is how they got Matthew's name, because in the interview he says that Matthew had a mole. He picks Matthew out of a junior high school yearbook. But remember now, keep in mind, this guy wants to he has some information because he doesn't want to go to jail now. You can see where he lies in this video. You can see also that the police officers in this video don't believe anything that he's saying. But anyways, just because he picks Matthew out, that's where the detectives begin to build their case against Matthew. In the beginning of the investigation, there are 4 anonymous calls that come into the police station, and all 4 of these callers name the same person as being the shooter, and they don't name Matthew. As a matter of fact, one of the callers states that he's coming out of a store and he sees so-and-so in a white car, and then he hears about the shooting. He says he also hears about the police going to his house and throwing a raid at his house. And he says that if you go in his backyard, you will find guns and ammunition. Apparently, these police officers never questioned this guy. There is no interview. There is no record of them ever interviewing this young man about this murder. Why? We don't know. After the robbery suspect tells the detective that Matthew is the one who did the shooting and describes him by the mole, the detective testifies in court that when Matthew's name came up, that he put a 6-pack of pictures together. And it just so happens that in this 6-pack of pictures, Matthew is the only one that has a mole. Whenever Matthew is placed in an identification 6-pack, picture 6-pack, he is the only one that has a mole. You see, detectives obviously went out and told the witnesses that the shooter had a mole. So when they compiled that 6-pack together and Matthew's the only one that has the mole, obviously they were going to pick the guy that had the mole. Nine months after the crime and 3 months after the main witness's cousin names Matthew, the main witness is back into the police station for an interview. The detectives in the first trial mislead the jury and say that she voluntarily comes in because she sees the guy in the streets. It is in the second trial that Detective Dicorce testifies that they got a 6-pack of pictures together and they called her in so that she could look at the pictures. And it is in this 6-pack that Matthew's in this 6-pack, and he's the only one with the mole. It is in this same interview that you can see, it's a taped interview where you can see Detective Dicorce manipulate this witness into changing what she had originally written on a witness admonition form. What she originally writes is, the guy in number 3, which is the position of the picture that Matthew is in, has the similar features to the guy that I have seen. When Detective Dicorce reads this, what she had written, he tells her, "Oh, similar is not a good word." He says, "I'm not trying to tell you what to say, but you have to use words like exactly." The witness, therefore, goes on and changes her original statement to, "The guy in number 3 looks exactly like the guy that I have seen." Throughout this interview, you can see how she is coached. When asked about the mole in the picture, in the interview, she says, "I don't know, I see the guy, and all I know is he has a mole around here somewhere." You can see her in this interview look up to the detective, and her finger starts to slide down her face, where you can hear the detective in the background says, "Like the mole on your face." And he goes, "Yeah, like this one." And she goes, "No, your mole is on the other side." Her finger jumps on. But when she looks back down to the composite drawing, she points her finger. She says, "I don't know. All I know is he has a mole around here somewhere." Matthew's mole is obviously here on his lip. And right after this, she's left alone in that room to fill out that admonition form. She looks around the room while she's there by herself to see if anybody's looking at her, I guess, I don't know. But she reaches in her purse. Now, mind you this, she reaches in her purse and she pulls out a cell phone. She takes a picture of the six-pack of pictures that have Matthew in it. When she's confronted by the detective, she says, "Oh, I just did it because I see the guy in the street and I wanted something to compare the picture, or to have to compare the guy with." But it is in court where it is learned, as we call her sister as a witness, it is established that the two girls had been talking about the case when they had been instructed not to talk about the case amongst themselves. But it was established that the sister testified that she had given her, the main witness, the phone 15 minutes prior to her going to that interview so that she could take a picture. She told her to take a picture so that she could make an identification also. In court, the main witness perjured herself openly when she was confronted with that question about the phone. The surviving victim in this case, the one that got shot 5 times and lost an eye, from the hospital bed, his interview or his statement was that he never saw the shooter. As time goes by, he changes his statement and says that the shooter had a goatee. He's shown us some pictures, and Matthew's in the pictures later on. They had a hard time finding this guy. He didn't want to testify. He didn't want nothing to do with this case. But he's shown pictures of Matthew, and he doesn't make an identification. As a matter of fact, in one of the interviews where he's shown pictures, he points somebody out and says, "Well, this guy kind of looks like him, but he doesn't have his goatee." The second time he talks about a goatee. The picture that he points to isn't Matthew at all. They're in a live lineup, and they have a live lineup with Matthew. Matthew being the only one with a mole in the live lineup, and not only he's the only one with a mole, but he's also the youngest one there. The main witness identifies Matthew, but the victim, the surviving victim, doesn't make an identification. When questioned by the police officers why he couldn't make an identification, he says, "Well, I couldn't identify him because nobody had a goatee." He consistently says that the shooter had a goatee. Matthew has never had any facial hair, and he still doesn't have any facial hair, and he doesn't shave. When shown pictures of the six-pack with Matthew, the main witness or the victim, he doesn't make an identification. There were 2 trials. The defense attorney for both trials was Arlene Binder. The first trial ended in a 10 not guilty, 2 guilty. The jury deliberated for 3 days and came back with the 10 to 2 deadlock. When the jury was released, we had the opportunity to speak to them, and the jurors told us that when the first day they went into deliberation, that the initial vote was 10 not guilty, 2 guilty. They deliberated for those 3 days, trying to persuade those 2 jurors that had voted guilty to change their vote to not guilty. In the second trial, Matthew was found guilty. We were devastated when this happened. We didn't understand how a first trial could end with 10 people voting not guilty, and then this second trial for them to come back and find him guilty, especially when there was nothing new that was presented in the second trial. I must mention that Matthew has a strong alibi. The crime happened at 12:20 in the afternoon, and Matthew was signed in at his probation officer at 1:01 that same day. When the detectives asked Matthew where was he at that day, he didn't know where he was. He couldn't remember that day because they came and arrested him almost a year later. The detectives are the ones who found out that Matthew had signed in at his probation officer. Matthew was on probation for possession of marijuana. He was signed in at a random drug testing. When the DA found out that Matthew was at his probation office, they came to our attorney at that time, Arlene Binder, and told her they were considering dropping the charges, except 2 new witnesses. These 2 witnesses, it was later learned, were paid for their testimony. When Matthew was found guilty that Friday, we immediately fired Arlene Binder, and we went and hired Christopher Darden. Christopher Darden, famous for the O.J. Simpson murder trial. At that time, we filed a motion for a new trial. The motion was heard by Judge Bob S. Bowers, the same judge that was during the second trial. His Department 105 in the Superior Court. I don't know if I mentioned, but the prosecuting attorney, district attorney, was Andrea Pott. And after the guilty verdict, Christopher Darden was contacted by alternate juror number 1. Alternate juror number 1 said that he was really concerned about Matthew, that he couldn't sleep after the verdict. He said that he knew that the district attorney did not prove Matthew a murderer. And in a declaration of perjury, he stated that the jury had been talking to themselves when they had been instructed not to talk. He came and testified in court that the initial vote when the jury went in the second trial was 9 not guilty, 2 guilty, and 1 undecided. In 45 minutes, those 9 people turned or changed their vote from a not guilty to a guilty vote. How did they do that? We don't know. This juror came forward and said that he had asked the court clerk if they could see Matthew 4 to 6 feet away from them, just like the defendant or the witness had claimed the shooter was, so that they can see the significance of the mole. The court clerk apparently never told the judge this, that they wanted or requested to see Matthew. Her response was, in all my time as a court clerk, I never seen the judge do this. When the juror took the stand and testified to this, Judge Bob Bowers, when Christopher Darden asked the defendant, when he asked the juror about this, the judge stopped him from answering the question and says, "We all know the answer to this question. Move on to the next question." Apparently, on record, he didn't want to show that his court clerk never went to him and with the request of the juror to see Matthew 4 to 6 feet away from him. There were so many things that were done in this trial that leads to misconduct. It was found out during this motion by Christopher Darden that there were three witnesses that the DA had called that were apparently paid and relocated for their testimony. The DA withheld this information from the defense. The jury has the right to know why a witness is coming to testify. It was found out that the DA had done this ex parte. There was no record ever of the DA telling the defense that these witnesses were paid and relocated. The DA was called as a witness by the defense after previous attorney Arlie Binder took the stand and testified that she had never been told by the DA that these witnesses were paid or relocated. The DA openly perjured herself on the stand when asked and confronted about this. Also, LAPD detective Lisa Governo withheld evidence about a witness being heard in the courtroom saying, "I never saw him before, that's the wrong guy," in reference to Matthew. On the stand, when asked if she said, "I can't say that that's what he said, but he did say something." When asked what did he say, she said his reply was, or his question was, "Is that him?" So the flow of conversation goes to what was heard in the courtroom, but she denied, or she admitted that she withheld that information from the court, from the DA, and from the defense as to what this witness had said. Judge Bob Bowers didn't rule a mistrial when it was established that the DA withheld that information. He did not declare a mistrial when the LAPD officer admitted to withholding exculpatory evidence, and he denied Matthew his retrial. This is the same judge in a case Mario Rocha was denied habeas corpus hearing, an evidentiary hearing. He was denied a release from prison after defense had brought in new evidence, and he was denied his release from prison. The appeals court overturned Judge Bowers' verdict or ruling, and Mario Rocha was released after serving 11.5 years in prison for a murder that he did not commit. This has been a very travesty of justice. At this present time, we have complaints that we have filed against these detectives and the way that they handled this investigation. We have complaints with the LAPD Internal Affairs, and these complaints are pending. We have also filed complaints with the U.S. Department of Justice. This is also an open case. There's a number. We have a case number for them also. We have also filed complaints with the State Bar, and I want to say this. We have filed complaints against the State Bar about Andrea's Pott involvement in misconduct. The State Bar has refused. They have refused to launch an investigation in Andrea Pott's dealings in this case. I have personally sent complaints to Jane Kim's office. There is a assistant named Dane Daphne that has demanded transcripts and have looked at the selected transcripts. He said that when Andrea Pott was confronted about this, that what she had told him, as I read it, was a lie. She lied to the State Bar about her involvement and not turning over this evidence. Let me inform you that The detectives that are involved in this case are the same detectives that have arrested the wrong guy, the first guy in the Dodger Stadium, the Brian Stowe beating. And there's some dealings there. I just want to say that we are very hurt about the way that this turned out, and we're looking for your help. The process in which these detectives used to have Matthew convicted, and the length that they went to having witness lie, is in itself criminal, and they should be prosecuted themselves. Someone told me that no one would get involved until it happens to them. Today we have an online petition that is asking for the U.S. Justice Department to look into the cases or past cases of these detectives and this district attorney to see if there's any other innocent people that have been wrongfully accused and convicted of crimes that are sitting in prison today. You can help and stand with us by logging on to this petition and signing it. Currently we have about 1,000 signatures online and on paper. Please stand with us. You never know if this could happen to you. I want to thank you for your time. Investigative reporters, if you would like to look into this case and like more detailed information, please contact Christopher Darton at the Fox firm. All contact information to the Fox firm will be at the end of this video. Thank you very much for your time, and may God bless.